And hello, everyone on YouTube. Welcome to Wellness Coach. My name's Stefan Ravalli, a host here at Wellness Coach. I'm also a meditation teacher and content creator. And I am joined today by John Siddique. We're going to talk about self care. How are you, John?
I'm really good actually, and here I am with we're talking about viruses and things all over the world at the moment. So I might give you the recipe for what's in this glass, if we remember.
I'm so curious. Every time I see a glass of colored liquid, I want to know what's in there,
If you
actually.
this is so everything's organic. This is my second glass. So we've got oranges, a beet, um, ginger, a thumb-sized piece of ginger, and a thumb-sized piece of fresh turmeric. And that's just been through my juicer. And I've topped it up with a bit of distilled water because the sugars in orange juice can be kind of quite overpowering for your system. So you have to drink it quite slowly. And I always cut mine a little bit with water. So these days, I just say build up your immune system, quite honestly.
Nice. That sounds really rejuvenating. And my wife's really into essential oils, and she'd be dropping stuff in there as well, which has
Oh,
been
fantastic.
incredible for our general immunity and well-being too. So that's a definite virus virus immunity plan for everyone.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's begin today's discussion. Before we do, I just want to remind everyone about the interactive features that I recommend taking advantage of and tapping into Mr. Siddique's expertise. Use the Q&A box, use the chat box, put up your hand so our awesome moderator, Kat, can enable your mic and we can talk directly to you and hear your voice. And just know that these features are only available on the app, which you can get at the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, wherever you get your apps. And on YouTube, we're so happy to see you there, but unfortunately, we can't speak with you. It's just a one-way communication street. So download the app so you can take advantage of these very powerful features. All right, John. Before we begin to today's discussion, did you want to start with a practice to settle us in?
Absolutely. And I thought we'd actually start with a little chakra based practice. Actually, hello everybody. It's lovely to see you all. And so much of kind of what I think we will probably discuss kind of comes from that kind of deeper sense of ourselves, that sense of uh, having a place on the earth. That's where I would begin, anyway, kind of thing. And so meeting ourselves through the kind of lower chakras, because in the Western tradition we tend to go in the heart and up and kind of ignore our human stuff, whereas actually as far as I can tell with my 4 something decades of practice so far is that the human stuff is actually the spiritual life. So and meeting that properly is the way. So if you'll just let yourself settle for a moment and just feeling your feet against the floor, feeling your weight against the seat, just allowing yourself to be lifted upright by the life energy in your spine. And we're just going to gently use our breath for this. Hands on your knees or hands in your lap. And so we're just going to direct the breath, just keeping the natural feeling of the breath, but allowing it to be felt to be coming in at each chakra point. And so going to the very first chakra, which is in your perineum, and then perhaps about 1.5 inches up into your body. So just allowing your breath to go out and breath to come in. And if you're a visual person, perhaps just feeling or seeing like a little light bulb switching on. Breath out, breath in, just your natural breath. And then moving up to the second chakra. And the second chakra is actually on the inside side of your spine, right down at the bottom of your sacrum. So right down at the very bottom of your spine on the inside. But the contact point is at your pubis. So we breathe in through the pubis, through the body to the inside side of the spine, right at the bottom of the spine. And out. And in. And out. and moving up Manipura, just an inch below your navel, and the skin is the contact point. And we come in through the body, in to the inside side of the spine, and there we feel that sense of well-being and feeling. And just noticing how this is for you as you move with the breath. And just to finish us off and bring us into the right zone, just taking a breath in at the heart, the area over the heart, and then coming through the actual physical heart to the inside side of the spine, behind the heart, and allowing that breath to go back out again. And so we are grounded in our being. Okay, so you can remain with this feeling throughout the session, and we'll carry on with our discussion and questions, and we'll see where we go. Stefan.
Thank you so much for that, John. And hello to those of you just joining us. See some friendly, familiar faces. Good to see Arun, Deborah, Dee, Iris, and Julie, Nancy, and Ryan. So many friendly faces today. And Deborah actually said that she's drinking some turmeric and ginger right now, too.
Fantastic.
A lot of global synchrony with turmeric consumption right now, I imagine.
Well, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. It's anti-cancerous. It's anti-inflammatory. It's quite incredible stuff. And then with the ginger, that gives you helps your digestive fire and purifying. It's fantastic stuff.
It's magical. It's even mood elevating. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love turmeric. All right. So, self-care. We were talking about human need in the pre-discussion. I think it would just be good to kick off in that terrain, since you talked about the chakras, talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I've actually found and read a lot of reflections on the chakras as also pretty aligned with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the root being basic survival, and then you get up to, higher level needs. I'm sure you don't like that hierarchical look at needs anyway, since they're all important in their different times. So yeah, what about self-care, and how do we address our own needs through self-care?
I think the first thing is to actually recognize them, and the time is over, kind of where we can sort of spiritually bypass things. All we have to do is kind of turn the news on for 30 seconds or so, and you can see kind of the kind of stuff that we're in, or look at kind of current work environments in a lot of places and so on. And so I think that the kind of the most important part of this kind of journey is to actually learn what your real human needs are, and then without judgment or criticism, because in certain areas they're very possibly not going to be, all that they could be, that we begin a path of allowing those to kind of come up to serve us better. In fact, I have a reflective question for our participants today. Something we've been doing in each session is kind of dropping a reflective question in. And so it'd be very nice to hear back from everybody, or at least for you to consider. So I just want to drop this in at this point, but I want you to meet it before your mind takes over. Just let it flash into your mind, and then let first thought be best thought, or even zero thought be best thought. And so what would it look like if you really took care of yourself, and how does that feel? Just let that kind of flash into your mind. What would it look like if you really were to take care of yourself in your life? We'll leave it there for you to reflect on. Brilliant. So So we need to actually, as I say, see what our needs are in the first place. And so we have the kind of the physical level of our lives, the relational level of our lives, emotional, mental, and then the one that you know that we kind of meet through our meditation seems to be spiritual, but actually that's what kind of leads back to the others.
All right, and we have some reflections posted. Deborah says that what came up for her was more time would be available for her. Keep those coming, guys. Let us know what came to mind when John took you through that practice. Deborah said more time. And I'll say what came to me, even though I'm a host and everything I say is supposed to be well constructed and not just random stuff. But for me, fluidity, flow, and ability to properly make like contact with what it is I need to do with less obstruction, I think. And that was immediately my thought with more self care. And then Nancy said peaceful. Ashley said nice. And Jennifer said carefree and freedom.
So what I would invite you to do is ask you what the heck you're going to do about this today in some realistic small way. It's nice talking about these things, it's nice reflecting on them. So maybe kind of as a journaling exercise or something like that, maybe reflect on what one realistic step that you can genuinely take in your life is today. Because unless we actually um, set off down a practical path, and meditation is kind of the tool that allows us to kind of, partially see where our blockages are, where we're not meeting things, instead of just kind of keeping those wheels spinning. Let's actually begin tracking our path, for ourselves. That's what we're here for. So homework, everybody.
All right. And if anything comes up in terms of what it is you need to do, let's hear about that too. And let's not waste any time and cut right to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's just get down to it. Here we are. This is what we're here for. We're called, you know, wellness coach. Well, the main coach has to be ourselves.
Absolutely. Really, I mean, that is self-care in a nutshell, right? It's like you are your own coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, and coaches have this amazing ability to be aware of what people need maybe before they do, or at least they know how to guide people's awareness to realize what they need. If it's a life coach, or if it's like even like a coach on a sports team, you see where the weaknesses are, and you know where to bring people's awareness to them.
Yeah.
So
Can I add something in there, Stefan? It's actually
yeah,
quite
please.
interesting. I had a friend who is a personal trainer, and I used to go to her actually many years ago when I was younger and much fitter. And she had a really interesting way of working, which is because if you go to the gym, and I can see that somebody's heading to the gym straight after this now, spurred on by us. And if you go to the gym, you always see these. It's always guys, I'm afraid. I'm sorry for our side of things, but with too much weight on the bar, kind of pushing like this, kind of thing, and they never seem to actually get any fitter, But they're always kind of shifting huge weights, but they never seem to change or anything like that. I'm not really talking about gym training, but what my friend Sue used to say is learn your weaknesses and train your weaknesses. Don't train your strengths, but learn your weaknesses and meet them, even if you have to go to a quarter of your weight and you can only do one movement. Doing that honestly and once, and then repeat that 10 times is better than doing 10 times badly with too much weight on.
Yeah, and I think to discussions I've had with other coaches about growth versus fixed mindset and the human tendency to only do what it's already good at. And that sort of need to perform for ourselves gets in the way of us doing where we actually need growth.
Absolutely. And where's that need to perform coming from? So that's like, I guess, that the object consciousness that we talk about so very often, or a kind of an idea that society is asking something of us, which it isn't actually, because we are the society. we can actually change the culture and the society for ourselves. But we take these kind of clues that only seek to have power over us and capitalize upon us, and actually give it credence instead of choosing a path of health and freedom.
Ooh, that was on mute there. Absolutely. And I wanted to now talk about, what we're actually gonna do about it now. Like, what is a good course of action in terms of doing what's right by us, and how do we know we're doing right by us? So, we're talking about, okay, I need to do this, right? And I could say that to myself. I have all this stuff I need to do. I need to write an article. I need to, ramp up my content program. That's what I need for myself, right? But that's just a bunch of stuff I feel like I need to do. And although I believe it's valuable to others and of service, if I really were to look at things, perhaps my actual human needs go deeper than that. So,
Absolutely.
and so how do we know what our actual deep human needs are? And how do we know which ones we see are just maybe, I don't want to say red herrings, but maybe us like fooling ourselves into thinking we need something when we don't?
Yeah, yeah. Just remind me of that second part when we get to it. If things are all about doing, if it's all looks like just loads more stuff that we have to add on, then we're not going to make it. I think it's as simple as that. If it's just a lot of doings, then really it's still in external things. The first place that you know, I don't like the word self care, but I can't come up with anything else at the moment. But perhaps just kind of, you know, living in a way that's actually congruent with the soul. That's what I would actually say to myself. Living in a way that's congruent with the meaning of my life, if you want to go that way. Um, that's an inside job, and so I have to kind of trust against that kind of internal guidance system. And while that sounds very vague, because unfortunately, even with meditation these days, we try to make everything very left brain, you know, and practical, as it were, whereas actually we're dealing with a balance of right and left brain stuff. We do have to kind of lean into the right brain a little bit, or the right heart, even. And so meet it at the level of the heart, I would say. That's how we know. If it don't feel, there's always an uncomfortability about doing something if we're embarking on something new. Like if you've lived on the standard American or the standard English diet all your life, and you realize that actually it's time to make a change, and then you switch over and you decide you're going to be kind of like a juicearian, or a raw vegan or something like that, only eating fruits and vegetables. Well, uh, the detox that's going to happen after 2 or 3 days, you're going to think all these fruits and vegetables have made you ill, and they haven't. What it is you're just full of sort of toxicity from the standard American diet, and actually you're going to need to take a more loving, caring approach of yourself for yourself. And so I would just say, slowly, steadily, small and realistically. Like in the reflection I said, what is the smallest realistic step that you can take today, not what's the biggest thing, because we always try to jump to the end. The ego brain always wants just to get to the big bit at the end and not do the work in between. And so it doesn't have to be hard work. I think, find the love for yourself that's in it, find the humanity in it, and don't make excuses to yourself. Radical honesty, radical authenticity with yourself, not anybody else. Telling other people, I'm going to go on a diet and lose weight. Your friends are just going to say, hey, you're going to look great. And then you just don't do it because you've had the feedback already. Don't do anything for anybody else. I think we need a new paradigm in this world, which is come up with some plans for yourself. Don't tell anybody about them, and don't share it on social media, and then knock that ball out of the park, and never tell anybody.
What's the point?
Exactly.
We
Be
can't, if we
accountable
can't
to
do something
yourself.
to impress others, what's the point? I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
I know. Well, I only meditate to make other people happy.
I want to return to the second part of that question, but KS has extremely apropos comment here. Doing my self-care means taking care of my children mentally and physically. So, can self-care involve caring for others?
I think within the family unit or within those that we love, I think, because we're in the land of the relational. So obviously the more heart and soul and love that's in the relationship and the transparency of that, um, obviously makes a kind of two-way street. Because if we're not actually taking care of ourselves, we can't receive either. We can't actually get anything back. And so the relationships will fall into, and I've seen many, many cases of this. My own relationship with my mother was a case where I was her egoic extension. So I was always a disappointment to my mother because, unless I did things that fitted her model of the universe and made her look good, then then I was actually hurting her, And then God forbid that you should have your own life, express any kind of sexuality, be a human being like this rather than that. You break the rules then. So learning within our relationships that others are not egoic extensions of ourselves, and then being able to offer into that. Of course, we're going to take care of ourselves much better that way. That is self-care.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, keep those comments coming. If you've given more thought to John's challenge at the beginning of the discussion, what do you need to do for yourself right now to show that show that you care? You know, you're your coach. You're cheerleading yourself to grow. What do you need right now? And I wanted to mention about caring for others because sometimes that is like a core need. It's like we need to be of service right now. That's maybe what we most would grow from. But I
Yeah.
guess there is like a point of like, and especially people who have a tendency towards service, where they put so much of themselves into others that they're pouring from an empty cup. So yeah, what's your process? Since I'm sure you're also a person of tremendous service, to maintain that I guess that inner stockpile of resources so you can most effectively be of service.
It's going to be different for each person, but I mean, my life is centered around my practice. That is the um, absolute core of things. In old Sanskrit, we'd have called it sadhana, and so every aspect of my day is part of the practice, but not in a kind of trying to achieve anything sort of way. But it's actually, true meditation practice leads to spontaneity in your life, and actually being present in the moment and kind of living through your life. And so again, it's not really doing. It's more about congruence. And I think uh, if there was kind of one key that has helped me along the way, it's kind of like keeping a journal and being radically honest, quite honestly. And as I say, not for other people, but to kind of to myself. But actually, when I started on this, I can actually remember kind of a time where I wasn't really taking that much care of myself, and actually considering myself to be a human being. It was at those times where I thought less of myself, that perhaps I would try to be of service in the wrong way. I tried to be a good person. I used to work in the prisons, for example. I've talked about this quite a few times. And I used to work in prison to try and prove that I was a good person. I was trying to save people and help people. And you may be of some service, you may be of some help, but actually it's not a whole. It's not a complete circle. um and there's a place for sacrifice, but it can't be all of the time. And it's not one thing or the other. It's not, I have to sort me out, then I can help somebody else out. Your actual coming into awareness is probably the most effective thing you can do, so that when you do move in compassion and service and helpfulness, that actually it is responsive and more accurate rather than scattered and dramatic. and feeding the ego.
Powerful guidance indeed, for those wishing to help others and do so, I guess, cleanly in a way. All right, we've got a hand up for Nancy. Kat's enabled your mic. Let's hear it.
Good morning, guys.
Hey, Nancy.
How are you? Question here. I've always found that I need solitude. I derive a lot of sort of regrouping and personal space around physical and mental solitude. I know I'm trying to get into a place where I can access that more rapidly, but I was wondering if you have any suggestions. I recently came back from a week where that wasn't a possibility, and so I'm into day 3 now of recovery. If you have anything to suggest as far as finding that space.
I mean, it has to be, we have to kind of allow it for ourselves in the world, really. Myself and my wife, we both are very that way inclined towards kind of our own spaces as well. And so I hear very much what you're saying. And I think, for almost like for every 1 hour that I spend with other people, I'll probably take about 3 for myself, not because I'm depleted by them or anything like that, but actually energies and kind of mind content and things. But what I've kind of found is that as the kind of the practice deepens, as we deepen into our practice, actually, our need to find satisfaction out in the world through kind of too much interaction or too much input, like having TV on and things like that, means that we naturally gravitate towards a kind of, not a quietude, but a kind of a wholeness within oneself that actually is more nourishing and more feeding, and actually we'll then begin to kind of seek out sort of spaces externally that give us spaces internally. I think if ever I'm kind of in the city and it's all getting too much, my version of a church is a bookshop. I like churches too, but bookshops, so we find ways of kind of taking the space if we need it and allowing it for ourselves. But very often these days you'll see people say they want some time for themselves, and then they just sit on their phone, and then that loses so much in kind of older yoga. I'm talking about Shivananda, who was my teacher's teacher. My teacher was Satchidananda. Shivananda used to say that about 80% of our life energy kind of goes out through the eyes by being kind of too involved in things, and so that we almost need a kind of inward turning of our gaze, not so that we're kind of cutting off from the world, but just so that we're kind of sort of taking away. And the phone being constantly in front of one's eyes, one's life energy is kind of going into that other material all the time. In fact, one of the things I'd say about taking care of ourselves is to kind of look at our, what I call diet. By diet, I don't just mean what you eat. I mean everything that you're taking in. I don't watch any news at all. I don't read any newspapers. The TV is not connected to the wall. It's just used as a screen for bits of YouTube and things. And that might seem really radical to some people, but I have found that to not be, all those voices coming in are not interested in my life in any way whatsoever, but they want me to give my life to their causes all of the time. And so rather than being in solitude, I've just switched off the voices.
Yeah, a definite powerful way to expand your view of your own life, as not just an actual material physical diet, but what's your experiential diet, all of your
Exactly.
interactions, everything, and
Yeah.
all of that stuff adds up, and does pattern your thinking and your way of being. So yeah, and it really, once I was had my attention drawn there by my teacher, who had an Ayurvedic background. And in Ayurveda, they talk about like everything's food in Ayurveda, including your experiences. And when I started to look at everything as food, that really changed how I care for myself.
Exactly. That's a fantastic. I'm gonna make a note of that myself after, Stefan. That's wonderful. Actually, think of everything as your food.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Well, we're at 30 minutes already, but we've got one more comment, and then I should get eventually leave you to send everyone off into the world, however you see fit. Anonymous user in the Q&A box says, that was powerful advice. That happens with me too. Sometimes I'm tired of always being there for family and friends that I lose myself in the process.
Yeah. Well, that is the thing. We can get very kind of drawn out by others. It's worth noting, not that I'm suggesting breaking families up or anything like that. It's also just worth noting in terms of the people around us. If you're there for people all the time, too much, are you stopping them being there for you? And I'm just going to leave you with that to kind of reflect on. If you don't actually give people the opportunity to be generous and compassionate, very often they're not, which is really quite interesting. And then if you leave the door open for them to do so and they're not, well, then they're still not. So then you have some decisions to make about who you associate with and your friendships and so on. But and your relationships. But as we kind of, as I say, practice, for me, it always comes back to the practice. And as we kind of genuinely meet the road of our own lives, because that's all it is. It's not about meeting, the practice that Jesus said or the practice that the Buddha said. Both of those tremendous human beings would have put us back. Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within yourself, you know, and actually, I'm trying to think of where it is in the Buddha's canon, but he actually says at some point that it actually has nothing to do with the mind whatsoever and everything to do with the heart. And so inwards, not inwards and withdrawn from the world, inwards and fully part of the world. That's actually the way to go. In fact, you can only be fully part of the world by this wholeness, this inwardness.
All right, one more comment that I wanted to read that I actually didn't get to because we shot forward. From KS, she said, I just shared this with my little one, and I think by that he means this discussion or at
Uh-huh.
least a component of it. And he says, she thinks it's narcissistic.
I think that a lot of what's presented as self-care is basically a narcissism. Yes, I wouldn't disagree. You will not find a bigger skeptic than myself around everything that's talked about within the spiritual life, and I will tear anything to shreds because I'm only interested in what's real, authentic, and genuinely helps us. And I mean, if you ever get to earwig in our kind of conversations just before we come on, very often we're talking about things that don't serve, that don't help, and yeah, absolutely. There's absolutely no time for anything that isn't real. That's why it's an internal process. That's why we have to look to the needs of our own life and to kind of remove the generational kind of egoic influences that are kind of not serving us, so that we can actually see more clearly how to step forward in all of our diet, as we've been talking about, in terms of our relationship and in terms of our congruence with our being. And it doesn't mean anything like that. It does not mean kind of being a narcissistic kind of, I'm a vegan, therefore I hate all the meat eaters in the world. I mean, everything seeks to divide us. Everything the way things are presented now is divisive. The way we have to work, if we genuinely want some change for ourselves and others and the world, is to look for the wholeness. We talk about, say, in politics, left wing and right wing, and people would like us to believe that there's a left wing and a right wing, but I have never seen a bird with only one wing ever get off the ground. All I see is it's about the whole bird. So my only thought on this, for myself, can't speak for anybody else. My goal is to be a healthy cell in the body of the world, and that's what kind of self-care is, partially a means to being a healthier cell. Not so that I can lord it over somebody else and say, hey, I drink juice and you eat steak. It's not that. It's that there might be something in the steak and there might be something in the juice. Let's find out, rather than going the other way.
Thank you so much for that. Really powerful way to close things off. I think really appropriate. And KS, just generally kudos to your daughter knowing the word, or little one, yeah, daughter, for knowing the word narcissistic. Most people aren't able to enunciate that until they're like in their 20s. So that as well. But anyway, thank you so much, John. Really great summary of things in terms of becoming a whole balanced person and what that really looks like. And we really covered a lot of ground today, and I hope everyone benefited as well. Jennifer said it was a great session. Nancy says, beautiful. Thank you. And thank you guys for your wonderful involvement today in a really, really kinetic discussion. So thank you, John. I'll pass things over to you now if you'd like to send us off into the world, however you see fit.
Bless you. Well, thank you, everybody. It's been really, really lovely to be with you today. These things are always surprising to us. The kind of we have the idea for them, but then what comes out is kind of always spontaneous and of the moment, and guided by you, which is kind of the wonder of this way that we're using this technology, which could so easily be for dividing us. We have all this technology that divides us, but look what Wellness Coach is doing. We're actually using these means to actually, here we are, we're a community all around the world right now, this very moment, and we're talking about stuff about wholeness. Here we are. Amazing. You're fantastic. Thank you. So let's just take our fantasticness and just bring that into our bodies. Let's just feel our body sitting here, and feel that beautiful physicality and the life in your body. And just let your body enjoy itself for itself. Let's meet ourselves on that simple physical level. And if you want to, you can feel that line of energy through your center, what we call the chakras sometimes. You can feel your breath. You can feel your mind. You can feel your emotions. You can feel all your 5 senses working, all this amazing life going on. And then you, with the congruence of your soul or your spirit, you can take a small step today. And that just might be in the way that you are with your son or your daughter or your partner. It might be how you are with yourself. But we just bring this wholeness a little bit more each day into life itself. Don't hide away. Just shine your fullness and your freedom. And with that, we'll see you very soon on Wellness Coach. Lots of love. Namaste.